Welcome to FilmmakerIQ.com. Today we're going to explore the Dolly Zoom, an in-camera effect made famous by Alfred Hitchcock in the film Vertigo. If you've watched film and television, you've probably seen the Dolly Zoom. It's when the foreground element stays the same size while the background elements grow or shrink. And it goes by all sorts of different names, such as the reverse tracking shot, the zolly, the stretch shot, the forward zoom reverse tracking trombone shot, contra zoom telescoping, or the vertigo effect. In fact, it was Alfred Hitchcock who first implemented this technique in his 1958 film Vertigo. According to legend, Alfred Hitchcock got this idea when he fainted at a party, and it was Paramount second unit cameraman Urban Roberts who developed it with Hitchcock for the film Vertigo. Since Vertigo, the Dolly Zoom has been used in many other productions, including by Hitchcock himself in Marnie. Steven Spielberg utilized this effect in Jaws in 1975. This sudden distortion of perspective isolates and zeroes in on Brody. His worst fears have become real. They should have closed the beach. The Dolly Zoom was also used in Martin Scorsese's 1990 film Goodfellas. In this conversation between Ray Liotta and Robert De Niro, everything seems normal on the surface, but the Dolly Zoom emphasizes that the world is slowly changing around them.
He took the booth near the window so he could see everyone who drove up to the restaurant. He wanted to make sure I wasn't tailed. He was jumpy. He hadn't touched a thing. On the surface, of course, everything was supposed to be fine. We were supposed to be discussing my case, but I had the feeling Jimmy was trying to sense whether I was going to rat him out to save my neck.
Henry has just come to the realization that his best friend has just put a hit on him, and there really are no Goodfellas in the life of crime. So why does the Dolly Zoom work? Well, it all boils down to the basics of photography. We're taking a three-dimensional world and reducing it to a two-dimensional image. So let's imagine a camera obscura, the most basic type of camera, a pinhole camera. We have a subject, an aperture, and an imaging plane. The light rays from the subject travel through the aperture in a straight line and onto the imaging plane. Now, if we draw a straight line from each edge of the image plane back out through the aperture, we can construct an angle. This angle is our field of view. With a pinhole camera, there's no way to increase or decrease our field of view without moving the image plane. But we can use lenses with different focal lengths or zoom power to bend the light as it enters the camera. And now we can see more of what's around, get a wider field of view with a wide angle lens, or zoom in closer with a narrower field of view with a telephoto lens. By bending the light, though, we introduce a phenomenon called perspective distortion, which is the warping of objects based on the distance from the camera. Now, perspective distortion doesn't change simply by increasing or decreasing the focal length or zoom. If I sit here with a camera, zoom all the way in, I'm not going to notice a shifting of perspective. But it does change based on the relative position of the camera to the subject. Compare these two shots. The left is a zoom in, while the right is a dolly in. The zoom-in shot just magnifies the image. In the dolly-in shot, the surrounding objects are affected by the changing perspective distortion caused by the camera movement. And this is how the magic of the Dolly Zoom works. We increase the focal length, we zoom in, as we simultaneously dolly the camera out, or vice versa, we dolly in and zoom out. The zoom keeps the frame crop the same, so the foreground element stays roughly the same size throughout the move. This isolates the effect of the perspective distortion caused by the movement of the camera. And this shifting of perspective distortion is what creates the effect of the Dolly Zoom. Theory is all well and good, but it takes a little bit of effort to actually get a decent Dolly Zoom in production. You're going to need two things, a dolly and a zoom. Well, that should be pretty obvious. You can try to do it with a slider, but you might run into the problem of having the slider get in your shot, and that's not good. I have done it with a slider, you're just more limited. As far as the zoom goes, you really need to have a camera with a smooth zoom, preferably a motorized servo-controlled zoom. It's nearly impossible to pull it off with a photography lens unless you're shooting stop motion. After all, that's why it took them till 1958 to achieve this effect. They needed a smooth mechanical lens in order to pull it off. Now to demonstrate, I have a cutout of Maestro himself, Mr. Alfred Hitchcock. I'll start the shot dollied all the way in and zoomed out. I'll keep the aperture stopped down so I get a deep depth of field so I'm not fighting with the focus during this move. Now as I move the dolly out, I will carefully zoom in at the same time, trying to match the speed of the zoom with the speed of the dolly. If I want the opposite effect, I'll dolly in from my final position while zooming out. Either way, I like to start with the dolly all the way in because I'm limited more by my wide angle than I am by my telephoto. Getting this effect takes a lot of practice to get just right, as the speed which you need to dolly and zoom will change depending on where you are in your focal length range. Just keep doing the shot over and over again until you get something that you're happy with. Just realize it does take a little bit of time. There is history and science of the craft of filmmaking. Now we're standing on the shoulders of giants. The Dolly Zoom was the result of Renaissance painters, scientists studying optics, an uncredited second unit cameraman, a legendary director getting dizzy at a party who, with a talented cast and crew, went on to create what many believe is the greatest film ever made, Vertigo. Each step contributing to our collective understanding and our history. So go out there, use it, make something great. I'm John Hess. I'll see you over there at filmmakeriq.com.